Oh, yes. Breeze, please. Help. Heal me. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Madison here, or Dandelion. Today we are doing another deity spotlight. We are going to be discussing the Celtic God Cernunnos. And I did a lot of research about the proper pronunciation of this god's name, so I really hope I landed on the correct one. And today we are not in our usual deity spotlight location. Normally we're at my altar, or one of my altars, my main altar, but today we are here outside in my backyard, sitting underneath the willow tree in my backyard. It'll become clear why, and if you know anything about Cernunnos, then you know that it's perfect that we are out here in the woods, in the wilds. I just was getting ready to film this spotlight today, and I realized that I really shouldn't be filming this spotlight inside. So here we are outside. And before we get started talking about Cernunnos, don't forget to like this video and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my future videos. So let's get right into it. So Cernunnos is a Celtic deity. Pre-Christianity, Cernunnos was worshipped mainly in what is now Britain, but also in Ireland. And there are other civilizations that had gods that are seen as sort of manifestations of Cernunnos, but we'll get into that in a bit. And Cernunnos is the lord of, or god of, the wilds and wild things. Aptly timed gust of wind. He's also known as the Great Horned God, and this is because Cernunnos is pretty much always depicted as having antlers or wearing antlers. Sometimes Cernunnos is depicted as half man, half kind of stag. He is said to sit beneath the ancient oak tree in meditation, and he connects all three worlds, the three worlds being land, sky, and sea. And we can also connect him to the three worlds in terms of the physical realm of the living, which we exist on, the spirit realm of the spirits of the land, the spirits of the elements, as well as the underworld and the world of the dead. And this ancient oak tree is said to be one with Cernunnos, so they are seen as one being. And one quote from one of the sources that I did my research from said, and this is in quotes, "His immense limbs widespread, stretching into distant sky and starry space." And I thought that was beautiful, a very good explanation of how we're connecting the ancient oak to the god Cernunnos. Cernunnos is said to be a bridge between the human realm and the animal realm. And as I touched on briefly before, Cernunnos is seen as either a human wearing antlers or as half human, half stag. Sometimes he is accompanied by a stag in depictions of him, or sometimes he is accompanied by a serpent with ram horns, and sometimes both are present, both the serpent and the stag. But as you can see already through how he's depicted, horns and antlers are very important symbols of Cernunnos. And this serpent with ram's horns that is often present with Cernunnos is seen as not just a representation of Cernunnos, but as a god in its own right. And I tried very hard to find information about this serpent with ram horns, and I did find some stuff that we will talk about in a moment, but I didn't find enough to satisfy my curiosity. One thing about Celtic mythology and Celtic lore is that we don't know much. There's not much left to study, unfortunately. It's not like ancient Greece or ancient Rome or ancient Egypt, where we have a lot of the writings of their mythologies and things like that. We really only have symbols of Cernunnos to study, depictions of Cernunnos to study, and stories that have been handed down orally through time, through the tradition and through the cultures. So there's a lot about Celtic religion and culture and mythology that we sadly just don't have access to. But this ram-horned serpent, from what I could uncover, typically is a representation of rebirth, healing, and transformation. Another thing that is important to discuss with a serpent as a symbol is that serpents also, something that I learned when I was just in Greece and I was visiting the some of the ruins there, and I got to talk to some scholars of ancient Greek history, which was amazing. Check out my vlog of my Greece trip if you want to see more about that. But one thing I learned in talking to the scholars there, serpents are often, especially in ancient mythologies and ancient lore, serpents are often representations of the land, and specifically belonging to the land, being a part of the land, being native to the land, connection to the land, and ownership of the land. But I don't want you to think of ownership in a sort of capitalistic colonized way. I want you to think of it in a way of belonging with the land, being in harmony with the land, not being separate from it. So being indigenous, being native. So this ram-horned serpent, in many ways, in my own knowledge and through my research and also through my own education that I have, I think we can mostly think of it, yes, as what I said before, as a symbol of rebirth, of transformation, of healing, but also as a representation of how Cernunnos, being a god of the wilds and the wild things, this serpent shows this aspect of Cernunnos which is in perfect harmony with the land and being an extension of a spirit of the land. And I think we can also understand this serpent symbolism more if we think about just the existence of the serpent. You know, snakes, it was explained to me in Greece, you know, this connection to the land that serpents and snakes have, they slither along the ground. They don't, you know, they don't have arms and legs. They're not separate from the ground. They are on the ground with their entire being, and they slither along it. So that is a literal example of how serpents and snakes represent that connection to the earth and that groundedness to the earth and with the earth. Cernunnos is also often depicted wearing a torque, which within these ancient times that he is from is a kind of necklace or neck ring, which symbolizes status. So it's this kind of status symbol showing how important he is. Another very interesting thing about Cernunnos is that he is strongly associated with the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. So again, going back to that association he has with the three realms, life, death, and rebirth is another set of three that we can associate Cernunnos with. And this is also a part of his connection to the land. So the land itself goes through this cycle every single year as the seasons change. So Cernunnos is the land. He is a representation, a spirit of the land, the spirit of the land. So he goes through this cycle every year just like the land does. He holds the wisdom of the fact that what is old must pass on to make way for the new. In the spring, Cernunnos is said to be the young son of the earth goddess, the All-Mother, which we'll talk about more in a moment. And in the summer, he is the fully realized, fully grown green man, representing the earth and the wilds. He is pure, untamed, and untainted masculinity. And in fall and winter, he moves into his death aspect, his underworld aspect, and is known as the Dark Man. So in spring, he's a sort of young boy. In summer, he's the Green Man. And in fall and winter, he is the Dark Man. And it is said that his decaying body, his decaying spirit, along with the land and the parts of the land that decay in the fall and the winter, that decay that he is a part of fertilizes and makes way for the seeds to pop up in the spring. And in ancient times, Cernunnos was understood to be a shape-shifting deity. So any aspect of the wilds, Cernunnos is said to be able to shapeshift into. So yes, Cernunnos is depicted in these certain ways, pretty much always, but Cernunnos is a shapeshifter. Speaking a bit on the aspect of Cernunnos that is present in the underworld and attached to the underworld, the dark man. Cernunnos is in the fall and winter said to be dwelling in the house beneath the hill, which is another way to describe the underworld. He is said to comfort the souls of the dead during this time, easing them into their rest. And being a spirit, a god of the wilds, he is also a god of the hunt, especially in ancient times. Ancient Celts very strongly associated Cernunnos with the hunt. And because Cernunnos is a hunter and the god of the hunt, he is said to hunt down the souls of those who do bad things, or for lack of a better term, evildoers. And especially those who have wronged the natural world. So those who have disrespected the land, those who have disrespected the animals, those who have disrespected nature, Cernunnos is said to hunt them down. And also, again, anything that has to do with nature, this falls under. So even those who have disrespected the cycle of life, death, and rebirth also will be hunted by Cernunnos. And as Christianity grew in power and popularity, especially with the people running the countries, as Christianity grew, Cernunnos became demonized by cultural and political leaders. So Cernunnos kind of became depicted in these blossoming Christian places as being the Antichrist. And this attack on Cernunnos as Christianity was growing in popularity and power comes largely from the fact that Cernunnos was a very powerful pagan force, very widespread, very well loved and worshipped by the Celtic people. So the Christians, the early Christians in these times were targeting Cernunnos and attempting to change the way people viewed him and depict him as an antichrist to make people move away from Cernunnos and into Christianity. And to talk about one point that I touched on briefly before, Cernunnos is said to be untamed, raw masculinity. And an important thing to talk about with this topic of masculinity is, you know, we have to separate the masculinity that we might have in our heads today as modern monarch butterfly. Oh my God. Sorry. Distracted by a butterfly. What was I saying? But yeah, so we have to kind of let go of the idea of masculinity that a lot of us have today. Our idea of masculinity is very much patriarchal and colonized and capitalistic. You know, I think a lot of people think of raw masculinity and they think of like aggression, power, the alpha male, which by the way is not even a real thing. So we need to remember that when we're talking about raw, untamed, untainted masculinity that Cernunnos represents, we're not talking about what we often think of in modern times as masculinity. We're talking about, you know, divine masculine in the pagan sense, the ancient pagan sense. So we're thinking of the energy of the sun, life-giving, you know, providing the conditions for life to flourish, this masculine aspect. And also the role of protector, just kind of a protector of the wilds, again, a hunter, a provider, a protector. And yes, he can be fiercely, I don't want to say aggressive because I think that's inherently negative in our minds as a term, but he is strong, he is powerful, he is masculinity. So he does have that strength and that ability to protect his own and punish those who have wronged his wilds and his creatures, but he is not unnecessarily violent or aggressive. He is masculinity that is fully in tune with the natural world. And something I mentioned that we would get into later is that there are other deities from other ancient pantheons and other ancient cultures that are seen as kind of aspects or manifestations of the god Cernunnos. And one that is the most prominent is the god Pan. Pan is a Greek god who also represents the wilds and the natural world, the woods and the animals, the creatures of the natural world. So if you want a full deity spotlight on the Greek god Pan, comment down below that you're interested in that. I really want to do a spotlight on Pan. Pan is similar to Cernunnos in a lot of ways, but also has his own attributes and aspects as well. So if you're interested in learning more about Pan, comment down below that you're interested in that. Another thing I mentioned briefly before that I'll elaborate on now is the All-Mother. So this is again another deity spotlight that we could do. If you're interested in learning more about the All-Mother, comment down below that you're interested in that, and we'll do a deity spotlight on it. But the All-Mother, who is known as Danu or sometimes Anu, is said to be, as it's in her name, the mother of all. So she is said to have given birth to Cernunnos, but in a way where he is not so much her son as he is her equal. So she is seen as sort of divine feminine, divine mother, and he is seen as divine masculine, divine father. So together they are first mother and first father of all living creatures. And I'm going to read a quote from one of the sources that I used for my research because I think it's so beautiful and I think it really sums up what we're talking about here. This is about Cernunnos. As Lord of the dance, he is present in the billions and billions of infinitely small movements that make up the seemingly chaotic dance of life, the dance of making and unmaking. He is truly the life that never, never dies. For even as nothingness, he is self-originating. He is triple as she is triple. She refers to the All-Mother. So he is seen as exactly her equal, just reflecting her in the masculine. And because Cernunnos represents all these things we're talking about, the wilds, the natural world, the cycle, life itself, as well as death, making and unmaking, he is also associated with virility. So he is the symbol of virility, of sensuality and sexuality. So he's also connected to reproduction, the making and unmaking, and also just, sexual pleasure, sexual power, and sexual expression. I also, in one of my sources for my research, saw him said to be Father, Son, and Wild Spirit. And I absolutely loved that because most of us, as we live in a very Christianized society, even those of us like myself who are not Christian, we always hear this, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit in reference to, the Christian God. But here we have Cernunnos, Father, Son, and Wild Spirit. I absolutely love that. So now that we have a grasp on who Cernunnos is and what he represents, let's talk about some correspondences for those of you that are wanting to work with Cernunnos and build a relationship with him. So colors, green, just green. The colors of life, the colors of the natural world. Green, brown, tan, just any colors that are strongly associated with living things and the wilds. Moving to plants and herbs that are strongly associated with Cernunnos. First we have the oak tree. As we talked about before, Cernunnos is said to be the ancient oak tree. So oak trees are very strongly associated with him. Also just in general, the woods, the forest, any wild landscape, but especially the woods. The land itself is strongly connected to Cernunnos. That's everything he's about. The land, he's a spirit of the land, spirit of the wild land, the untamed land, the uncolonized land. So in that way, soil, earth, a literal handful of earth is a great way to represent him. If you want to make an altar to him and put a bowl of earth, that would be great. It'd be even better if you can put your altar to Cernunnos outside. That's absolutely ideal. Cernunnos is also connected to cinnamon. Cinnamon is a great herb to give as offering to Cernunnos. Also cedar and pine. So these kinds of trees that would be present in these wild spaces are all great to use in connection to Cernunnos, but specifically oak trees, cedar trees, and pine trees. Moving to animals, we already have talked about a few. Of course, the number one animal that Cernunnos is associated with is the stag. So deer, stag, bucks, any animal like that, that's the number one animal that is associated with Cernunnos. Also, like we said, the serpent, specifically the serpent with the ram horns. Also boars. Boars are very important in terms of the hunt. You know, often these ancient people were going out to hunt boar, so boars are also seen as associated with Cernunnos. And symbols that are animal related that are strongly associated to Cernunnos, we touched on this before, horns and antlers. Number one thing that represent Cernunnos, horns and antlers. Talking about some crystals that you can use with Cernunnos or for Cernunnos, amethyst, gold, all green stones. Every single green stone. So emerald, agate, any stone that's green, onyx, and my personal favorite for Cernunnos, fossils. So fossilized stone, any piece of rock that has a bit of fossilized, remains that have left its mark. Also, clear quartz is a great crystal for Cernunnos. Crystals are great in general for Cernunnos because crystals are, they're found within the earth. So that's a very strong connection to Cernunnos. One thing that we're going to talk about in this deity spotlight that I don't often include in other deity spotlights is ways to know that Cernunnos is calling to you. So one way is that you feel compelled to spend more time in nature. You feel compelled to spend more time in the wilds. That is the call of Cernunnos. Also stags, deer, appearing to you in real life and also in your dreams or in your dreams. That's a strong sign call from Cernunnos. And one quick little personal story that I'll share that is relevant to this is part of why we're sitting here beneath this willow tree for this deity spotlight is because I actually had an experience with Cernunnos connected to this tree. Cernunnos, Pan, the indigenous spirits of this land, I see them as sort of manifestations of all the same energy. But one morning in the spring this year, I was awake very early in the morning just to go to the bathroom. I wasn't up to stay awake or anything, but it was about 6 a.m. I got up to go to the bathroom, and as I was returning to my bed, I walked past one of the windows that faces this backyard with this tree, and I noticed a kind of, to me from where I was, it just looked like a brown lump. Kind of to my left here, next to the tree, underneath the tree. And I was like, wait, what is that? Because I knew normally this is all just grass. And I came around to the end of the house where I can see this tree better, and I looked out of the window, and I realized as I got closer and I could see better, it was a female deer lying here beneath the tree, literally right here. She was lying here beneath the tree, and deer are not unusual here. I see deer every single day. But I saw her lying here, and as I looked at her and as I watched her for a few seconds, I realized that there was a fresh baby deer next to her, lying next to her, occasionally getting up and stumbling around. This baby deer had just been born beneath this tree. And as I was watching and I realized, oh my God, she came here to give birth. As I was watching, she was lying on her side and she lifted one of her legs up and I saw her start to lick herself. And as I was watching, I saw it happen. It was the most incredible experience ever. As I was watching, another baby deer came out of her womb. She birthed another baby right in front of my eyes. And then there were two baby deer crawling around right here underneath this willow tree, and she was lying here, cleaning them up and resting. I got to witness this amazing moment of this deer giving birth to her 2 babies. I couldn't believe just the luck, the fate, just the synchronicity of me ending up right there at that moment, at that window, to see this amazing, beautiful, sacred, often unnoticed moment. You know, she came here to be alone underneath this willow tree to give birth to her children, and I just so happened to be in the right place at the right time to witness this amazing, magical moment. And that to me was such a blessing from the land. I've been doing so much to try to connect to this land that I'm living on, that I grew up on, and that is stolen. I've been doing so much to try to nurture the land and connect with the land and become one with the land. And we'll talk more about that later, because that's one of the ways that is a great way to connect with Cernunnos. But it just felt like such a beautiful affirmation of the work I've been doing to connect with this land and become in tune with it, getting to witness that beautiful moment. It was incredible. So experiences like this with deer, stag, buck, are very strongly connected to Cernunnos. Another sign that you may benefit or be interested in working with Cernunnos, or that Cernunnos wants to work with you, is a high sex drive. So Cernunnos is really into that. He's really into that. Like I said, he is virile masculinity. So a high sex drive is associated with Cernunnos. Moving on to ways you can work with Cernunnos if you are wanting to start working with him, or you're just wanting to find new ways to work with him if you work with him already. The first thing is go to the wild places. The number one way to connect with Cernunnos is to go be in the wilds. Go be in nature. Go out into the woods. Go out into the natural world where, you know, nothing is colonized, nothing is civilized. Enter these wild spaces and open your mind and your senses to Cernunnos' presence. And I feel like it's important to say, be careful in wild spaces. Don't go wandering out into the wild with no clue where you are. Make sure that somebody knows where you went and how long you'll be there for. You know, pack mindfully, make sure you have everything you need. Be safe. Don't just go out into the wild and act like it's easy. The wilds are called the wilds for a reason. They are wild. Another thing you can do to connect with Cernunnos' energy is to start to work toward understanding more the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. Study and understand, seek to understand and study the processes of healing, the processes of growth, as well as the processes of decay. And this could take many forms. So go in whatever direction that goes for you. Follow whatever your heart is telling you to follow. One kind of ritual that I saw in one of my resources for my research on this deity was a practice of, you go out into the wilds and you just start walking toward the horizon. Walking toward the horizon that goes away from the civilized world. And again, be careful, don't get lost. Be present enough to not get lost. You know, bring a GPS or something of the sort. Mark your path in some sort of way. Whatever you need to do to make sure you don't completely get lost in the woods and, you know, never heard from again. We want you to come back from the wilds. So go to the edge of the wilds and walk toward the horizon in the direction that goes away from the civilized world and into the heart of the wild wood. And this, in the resource I found, this ritual is described as, it may seem like you are traveling away from the center to the perimeter. You know, if we're having a kind of anthropocentric, you know, human-centered perspective, then we'll see the civilized world as the center and the wilds as the perimeter. But really, in this ritual, you are practicing the opposite. You are moving from the perimeter, which is our human civilized world, colonized experience. You're moving back toward the center, the wilds, which have always been the center of all things, the center of making and unmaking. This is where this resides, in the wilds. So it may seem like you're moving toward the perimeter, but actually you're leaving the perimeter and moving toward the center by finding this heart of the wilds. It's described as a sort of return to the center, and I think that's a good title for this ritual, Return to the Center. And I'm going to read a quote from this source who spoke about this ritual to connect with Cernunnos. So here's the quote. When the seeker reaches the god's forest, the track ends, and her/his pathways are found by other means. After entering the wild wood, the seeker cannot be followed, nor can she or he follow another. Whatever pathways are discovered disappear in passing, and the wood is trackless once again. For each one's way is different. In the forest of Cernunnos, there is a stillness, an otherworldly feeling, as if one has passed out of time. Here, the mind is not supreme. It is instinct, the innate wisdom of the body that guides us to him. So that is a great explanation of what we're focusing on with this ritual, this moving to the center. And Cernunnos, because he is the spirit of the land, the spirit of the wilds and all wild things, he is strongly associated with shamanic work and shamanism. So if you don't know, really briefly, because shamanic work is complicated, really briefly, shamanic work is all about connection with the spirit realm. And I do not mean the spirit realm in terms of dead spirits, dead ghosts, the ghosts of people. I mean the spirit realm in terms of, the spirit of this tree, the spirit of this land, the spirit of the water, the spirit of the river, the spirit of the air, the spirit of the wind, and even spirits of non-physical things, the spirits of death, the spirits of creativity, the spirits of protection, the spirits of power. So that's what we're thinking of when we think about shamanic spirit communication. So connecting with these spirits of the land, whether it be the spirit of the river behind your house, or the spirit of the pond that you often fish in, or the spirit of your own creativity, by connecting to these spirits that live within this shamanic spirit realm, you can connect to Cernunnos better through those relationships with aspects of him. And if you are familiar with me and my channel, you'll know that I myself am a shaman. I apprenticed with a shaman in California, an indigenous shaman. For 8 months, I apprenticed with this shaman before he deemed me ready to, hold the title shaman myself. And I actually train people in shamanic work. I train people to be shamans. I take apprentices. So if you would like to be my apprentice, if you would like to start an apprenticeship with me, I take on 2 to 3 at a time. We can work one-on-one, or we can work in small groups. And I do this long distance over virtual, like Zoom, or we can do this in person if you live in upstate New York. So if you want to be an apprentice, the link is in the Dropbox. You can reach out to me through my website, and we can start to discuss if you want to do this apprenticeship with me to become a shaman, or just practice some shamanic work. You don't have to fully become a shaman. If you just want to learn how to communicate with the spirit realm better, then that's something I can help you with. So if you're interested in any of that, check out the link below in the Dropbox. I can tell you that shamanic work is some of the most amazing spiritual work that you can participate in. It's definitely if I had to pick a favorite, it would be up there of all the spiritual work that I do. So if you're interested in becoming a shaman or just learning about shamanic work, reach out to me. Another way to connect with him, of course, as with any energy being, any deity, is building an altar to Cernunnos. So like I said, building an altar to Cernunnos outside especially is ideal. You can have an altar to him inside if you need to. That's totally fine. It's a good way to bring the wilds, the spirit of the wilds and the spirit of the land into your living space, into your indoor space. But if you do have the ability to make an altar to Cernunnos outside, that would be amazing. On this altar, you can leave offerings to Cernunnos, but it's important to note that all your offerings, if your altar is outside, should be safe for wild animals to consume and interact with. So don't leave anything on that altar that could harm a being of the wilds. That would get you in trouble with Cernunnos real quick. And at this altar, whether your altar's inside or outside, again, it's ideal if it's outside, but whether your altar to Cernunnos is inside or outside, spend a lot of time at this altar, specifically in meditation. And as we talked about before with Cernunnos, he is associated with sexuality and sensuality, sexual expression. So also sex-related rituals and sex-related magic can also be a great way to connect with Cernunnos. So if that's within your practice, that's something you can incorporate into your relationship and your workings with Cernunnos. Also, there is a chant to Cernunnos that I found during my research that I really loved. I think it's really great. I'm going to put it here on the screen, the chant to Cernunnos, but I will also put it in the Dropbox. So if this chant is something that you would like to try, you're supposed to say it 6 times. It's a good way to evoke Cernunnos into the space or into your altar and work with him and communicate with him. The last thing we're going to talk about are some offerings to Cernunnos. So as I already mentioned, giving offerings to Cernunnos, you want to make sure that you only give him things that are consumable by wild creatures and safe for the land. Cernunnos is the land. Cernunnos is the wild creatures, the wild animals, the wilds themselves. So you don't want to give him anything that's going to harm him or his wilds. A list of things you could give to Cernunnos: wine, mead, beer, things of the earth, meaning fruits, seeds, grains, honey is another popular offering to Cernunnos, baked goods, cakes and breads. Remember, only things that are safe for the wild. So don't bake a cake full of stuff that's going to harm, you know, whatever bunny comes along and nibbles on it, or whatever, you know, bug comes and gets stuck in it. You have to be careful with that. So cakes and breads with discretion. Make sure that your ingredients are clean and safe. Fresh water. Putting fresh water on your altar is a great way to give offering to Cernunnos, because an animal can come along and drink from that water and receive the offering that way. Cernunnos can receive the offering that way. This is especially great. I used to live in California, where we have a lot of drought problems, a lot of dryness, a lot of animals that need water. So this is especially great if you live in a very dry place, a place where the wild animals will benefit from a bowl of fresh water. That's a great offering for you to give. Keep in mind that if you are going to give water to animals, clean the bowl regularly, clean the water regularly. Don't leave it sitting there for weeks and weeks and weeks without being tended. You need to check it daily. You need to clean it daily. Otherwise, it will become a breeding ground for not so nice stuff. And you can also end up spreading disease to other animals, because one sick animal came and drank from the water, got the bacteria or the infection in the water, and then everyone who comes and drinks from it is going to get sick. The same is true for bird feeders. So you could also have a bird feeder that's associated with your Cernunnos altar. That's a great thing to do, because then you're giving to the birds. But again, clean your bird feeder regularly. Keep the seeds in it fresh and healthy. Okay, that is all about the Celtic God Cernunnos. I hope you enjoyed this video. I really enjoyed doing this research. I've been connecting with Cernunnos and with Pan a lot lately. Again, if you're familiar with my channel, I recently purchased a large piece of land and am steward of that land now. So through that, I've been trying really strongly to connect with the land and be a voice for the land, a protector of the land. And part of that is connecting with and honoring gods like Cernunnos and Pan. So I really enjoyed this video. Remember that these deity spotlights are chosen by my channel members and my channel subscribers. So if you go to my channel and you go to the posts tab of my channel, you'll see that I put up community polls for everyone to vote in that decide what deity we're going to spotlight next. So if you really like this deity spotlight, you like my deity spotlights, and you want to be a voice in what deity we spotlight next, hit that subscribe button, hit that join button, and then you can vote in the next poll. The next poll to decide what our next deity spotlight topic will be is up now. So go vote right now. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you soon. Blessed be. You ever get grass in your laptop? Just witch problems.